Okay, good morning. It looks like we're live. Welcome to the Elyria Planning Commission, Tuesday, June 4th. Roll call. Mr. Onderko? Here. Mr. Panowski? Here. Mr. Tedrow? Here. Mayor Brubaker here. Approval of the minutes on to approve the May 7th, 2020 minutes as distributed. So moved. Moved by Mr. Onderko. Any discussion? All in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Miscellaneous correspondence, there is none. New business, there is none. Old business, there is none. We have two public hearings. I am going to do 2024-100075, DBR Commercial Realty LLC, East Broad Street, Elyria, Ohio, 44035, request for new subdivision at Reeser Point Crossings First. There's a reason why. To my left is Mr. David Graves, who is my appointed administrative legal counsel in regards to this project, as Mr. Craig represents the city and DBR in some litigation. And we are using Mr. Graves so that Mr. Craig does not have a conflict. So is DBR here and ready to present? Please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, please. You want to say that in a microphone again, Mr.?
Good morning. David Lum from McCarthy Levitt, Crystal Liffman, address 2750 Claythorne Road, Shaker Heights.
Okay, proceed.
Good morning. Happy to be here today. I want to introduce you the team. Obviously, David Lum, I'm attorney, represent DBR Commercial Realty. With me, I have Dan Reeser, the principal of DBR, as well as Danny Reeser, his son, who's with DBR. John Walsh from GBC Design is the lead engineer, and Brad Booth is with GBC as well, here to present today. We also have Nick Summers is here from Ryan Homes as well. I wanted to give you a quick overview of the project, tell you what we're doing, planning, and then I'll turn it over to John to walk you through the design and everything else. Quickly, it is going to be a significant project with approximately 422 townhome development. There are going to be for sale units, individual fee lots to be sold, and those are going to be located on the end closer to Walmart. On the other end of the project, it's going to be the Broad Street end. There's going to be 14 commercial lots for development for commercial uses. Have a potentially significant positive impact on the area. Obviously, you know the history of the site. It's vacant now. This is going to produce a significant, I think, positive impact and development on the area, bringing lots of residents, townhomes, as well as some land for commercial development. In all, I think as projected, it's going to be roughly 150 million or so in improvements built on the site per this plan. So it's quite a significant project. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to John, let him walk through the plan, and he can explain it to you.
Morning, my name is John Walsh with GBC Design, 565 White Pond Drive, Akron, Ohio. And we're the engineers and surveyors for the project. And glad to be before you this morning to present the Reeser Point Townhome. It's an exciting project, I know, for the Reesers, and an exciting project for GBC Design. The project, as David said, consists of 422 units. The buildings range from a 4-unit to an 8-unit building, and the goal is to have each unit sit on a fee simple lot. So when you purchase your unit, you're actually buying a lot, similar to how you would buy just a single-family home, as opposed to a condo or different type of fee transfer mechanism. To do that, we're proposing 30-foot alleys that would service, sorry. You guys have a fine, you have a fine jar if your cell phone goes off during a meeting or not? Each unit's going to be serviced by a 30-foot alley, and in that alley will obviously be the pavement, and then the public utilities, there'll be sanitary sewer, water, storm sewer, that'll go back and service those. At the end of each alley, there's a parking lot / turnaround. The shape of that turnaround actually meets the Ohio Fire Code for enabling to turn a fire truck around. So it services, one for the fire and emergency access to turn around, and then it also provides extra parking areas for the folks through there. It's pretty much going to utilize all the utilities that were constructed when the main road was constructed. And, I think through the process, obviously, is the preliminary plat for us to do that. And then we're, upon approval of that, we're ready to go to final drawings and, working with staff through all the final engineering comments and stuff as we go through the project. And then the northerly part, as David mentioned, there's also 14 proposed commercial lots that are laid out through there. And those are meant to be sold individually to different users with a retail commercial component to it. I guess with that, I'd keep it brief, but I'd obviously welcome any questions that board members may have, and I'm sure the rest of the group would help answer any questions.
Thank you. Let's do staff reports. Mr. Farkas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. The proponent is requesting to establish a new subdivision on parcel 0625001, 000248, 0625007, 00274, 065 25007, 00256, and 0625070, 000-254, consisting a cumulative of 53.745 acres. The site is proposed to have 42 townhome/styles lots created, including several 2 inner sites proposed ×7 of commercial uses. I provided a very large memo, as this is a first and unique proposal. I will forego reading page by page, but did list many of the things for consideration for the board's use regarding the different types of uses, the overlay requirements, permitted uses, additional regulations, the purposes of both business general, light industrial, et cetera, the general design standards for subdivisions, neighborhoods. I'm going to skip down to my recommendations, as I think that would sum it up. My recommendations, per the information listed herein in the unique proposal of the subdivision, consideration should be given to the design and purpose standards of section 11.1201, 11.1215, and 11.2301 established in the zoning code. From a preliminary standpoint, if a BG overlay is utilized, it would permit residential except detached dwellings of 3 households or less, but has no mechanism to account for a subdivision proposal development criterion as do other districts in the zoning code. If the commission considers this an approved use development BG overlay, the approach should follow the procedure of a major subdivision, i.e. plan unit development or neighborhood development, and I'm going to include even in a residential multi-household high-density development, or other similar zoning classifications, as to establish a baseline development criterion, as it would provide a standard to assure any modification is orderly and desirable for the residential community and within the city of Elyria for this hybrid subdivision proposal. I will therefore rely on the board's discretion moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farkas. Ms. Scott from Community Development.
No additional comment.
Mr. Schneider from Engineer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to go over a few items in my memo as well. I guess I actually have a question in regards to the roadway to the engineer. Are the alleys supposed to be private or public?
We're proposing them as public.
Okay, because that makes a big difference as far as my comments. There are areas in the development that will remain obviously private. The developer will be required to have a homeowners association to manage those areas. There are a number of easements shown in here, some of which have not been defined as far as what the easements are for, other than it's a storm sewer easement doesn't define. That will need to be defined later on. Because there's public improvements, the developer be required to have a developer's agreement and bonding for public improvements prior to a plat being performed, unless all improvements are completed prior to the plat being issued. Per city ordinances, the alleys, which are 30-foot right-of-ways, per the definition of an alley is a public way not more than 24 feet wide, which affords only a secondary means of access to abutting properties. This is in contradiction to our ordinances as far as requirement for right-of-way. Elyria Codified Ordinance 1112.11 requires that the minimum right-of-way be 60 feet wide, not 30 feet. So if it were to be a public or a private road, that would go away, being that they want to make it public. It does not conform to the city ordinances. The developer is asking for 22-foot roadways. This is less than the 28 feet required by city codified ordinances. With that, anything less than 26 foot would not allow parking on the road, which the developer does have additional parking in the back, so there is that for that. Street lighting was not provided in the plan. This is something that will be required as well. That can be added later on if Planning Commission so desires. Sidewalks, another item that was not shown on the plan. This is something that is required as well by city ordinances. Street names. I assume the street names are just going to be letters. I mean, that's something different that we've ever seen, but I don't know if that's a fire department more so question, I guess. In regards to the water main, it's looped throughout the system. It will be required to be built to city standards. Some of the hydrants are just in the preliminary plan are shown exceeding the 400-foot limit. Those will need to be revised as well. As far as the spacing, the sanitary sewer, this is something that we really need to look into prior to going forward. The proposed sewer out there, a number of years ago, there was a capacity study done on the sewers that showed that there is issues with the sewers that run and feed this area. I don't have the study with me yet. I did acquire it from the engineer who performed it to see what they actually proposed for that development, whether it was residential or whether it was a commercial industrial, because there are big differences between the two as far as flows for sanitary sewer, so we still need to look into that. And in regards to the stormwater, there's a number of rear yard drain, common yard drains shown on the plans. We do not allow that any further in the city, as it has provided issues with the laters. I should say, we used to allow a common sewer in the backyards. Then people would put fences up, trees up, it would clog it, and that created issues amongst the private property owners, and we now require each to have their own private drain in the backyard to a lateral out front. If a common lateral was used in the back, it would have to be on HOA property, something that each property owner would have access to, as well as their own, their drain as well. So I guess with that, that's all my comments for today.
Great, thank you, Mr. Schneider. Assistant Chief Gall, Fire Department.
Fire Prevention Bureau concerns will be addressed during the plan review phase. I do recognize that they did offer the turnaround, we call it a hammerhead, I believe, right? The Sutphen Tower that we would be wanting to see the curb radius and stuff. If your design engineer reaches out to me, I can provide the build number for our Sutphen aerial and ensure that that navigates that turnaround. Engineers talked about the hydrant spacing and the loop system. I think that if you follow his guidelines and we get to the plan review, I'll offer more comments along those lines. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Assistant Chief Gall. Assistant Safety Service Director Colbert.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chairman. I did a review as well of some of the zoning issues, and just for a point of clarification, the property is zoned RDOD currently as it is today. So in 2023, City Council did approve that those parcels be rezoned to the redevelopment overlay district. And that marries light industrial with business general. So both combined uses, all the principally committed uses of which this project does fall under, a principally allowable use under the business general, it is allowed to go forward with that. So just wanted to ensure that there, based on my review, there is no need to rezone the property as it is. It is allowed to move forward under that existing RDOD designation and the business general allowances. And it would still be required to go through the standard subdivision approval that's outlined in the city ordinances.
Thank you. Administrative Legal Counsel, Mr. Graves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to reiterate some of the comments that have already been made by Assistant Safety Service Director Calvert, City Council did rezone these parcels to RDOD, which, as she said, combines the uses permitted in light industrial and general business. Residential, except detached dwellings of 3 households or less, is a permitted use. They also passed Ordinance 2023-82, which stated that the City of Elyria would support any petition by DBR to rezone the property as necessary to achieve actual development consistent with prevailing market conditions, and further stated its intention to seek rezoning to redevelopment overlay district. So this is permitted, but as the chief building official pointed out, it doesn't really give a lot of guidance as far as the baseline to apply. However, if it were to be characterized as a neighborhood development under Elyria Code 1112.15, it does state that when a subdivision is developed as a neighborhood unit, large subdivisions designed on the basis of neighborhood units being reviewed, it says that the Planning Commission may vary the requirements of 1112.09 through 1112.12, which include a lot of the points that the city engineer raised regarding the roadways and drainage, to allow the subdivider more freedom in the arrangement of streets and lots. So also, as the building official pointed out, you do have a multifamily high-density district, which could provide some guidance in establishing a baseline for density, setbacks, et cetera. So I think the Planning Commission has a lot of discretion here. It is a permitted use. This is just a preliminary subdivision plan hearing, so which would have to be confirmed by City Council, and as the code states at 111106, approval or conditional approval of the preliminary subdivision plan shall not constitute approval of the final plat. Rather, it shall be deemed an expression of approval of the layout and used as a guide in the preparation of the final plat. So this is just a very preliminary review of the layout. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Graves. Did you have something? Go. Yep.
If I could clarify one point, there is intended to be, and there will be, an HOA with respect to this property. So a homeowners association that will deal with it. With respect to the alleyway, one thing we proposed is that the HOA be responsible for snow plowing maintenance with respect to those roads, because we understand, for trucks and everything, there's a turnaround at the end, the hammerhead, but the HOA would be responsible for snow plow maintenance to alleviate some of the city services and maintenance on that.
Great, thank you. Questions from the commission? Mr. Panowski?
So I just wanted to, a couple of things were said, this hammerhead thing at the end. I don't think I noticed this at the beginning, but the alleyway, it's a one-way in. You have to go to the end of it, turn around, and come back out the same way. They're not connected behind the buildings opposite of Reeser Point Main Road. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so it's one way in, one way out. That seems, I don't know, I have a lot of the same concerns that the engineer expressed in his report, but that also gives me concern about if one of those alleyways was blocked, the accessibility there, because there is no other way around it. That just seems a little bit risky to me. It's not something I've seen before, but that catches my eye. I am always concerned about overcrowding, jamming stuff into the space. I've been pretty consistent in how I vote up here on that, and I do see some of that here with the lack of sidewalks and the narrow streets and some of that kind of stuff. So in a very general sense, that concerns me a little bit. And I know that at the initial unveiling of this idea, this plan, there was talk about it being a walkable neighborhood. So I'm curious how you accomplish that without the sidewalks and stuff, because that was one of the really interesting selling points about it just being this really kind of, you had the commercial part that you could, be at, you could live here and walk around, and it was very accessible. So,
So to address that, Dan Reeser.
Yes, sir.
177 Reeser Court, area. There is a development agreement in place. There is a settlement agreement in place that the engineers department knows, and most everybody else knows. It's a requirement of items to be finished, and one of those is a sidewalk that the city is to provide, as well as the street lights that the engineer mentioned is required by the city to provide, amongst a bunch of other items that are on that list. So I'd suggest, after the meeting's over, if we get copies to the commission of that settlement agreement, where they can see all the items that are required to be put on there by the city. But there will be sidewalks provided by the city. There will be street lights provided by the city. It will be walkable. One other side note on it, there is going to be a TIF on this project, a continued TIF on this project. There already is a TIF on this project at this time. And this property is going to generate $150 million worth of improvements, which is 5.5 times the amount of revenue that would be generated under the current proposed light industrial that was originally going to be used. And that, to put it in context, Chestnut Commons has $27 million worth of improvements. They had a $3.5 million TIF. The city's collected $13.7 million through 2023. This is going to be 5 times the amount of revenue that the cities and the schools are going to receive from this project. So all those items and all those items that are in the original development agreement and in the settlement agreement will be provided on this project, plus other items as well, community aspects of it, pocket parks and so forth.
yeah, but those are projections, and I don't know that that's what we're here to talk about today necessarily. And I guess I would have expected to see in the plan sidewalks regardless of who was paying for them, because we're talking about space and we're talking about allocation of space. I guess that was more about my question. If they're not in there, regardless of who's going to pay for them whenever that time comes, that's my question as to where would they be, because they're not part of the plan that's been presented. So that's what caught my eye. That's why I was asking. But that was my only concern.
Any other questions for Mr. Hubbard?
Yes, I guess my question centers more around, I see quite a bit of residential development in this plan. Routinely, daily, I would say, between the hours of 3 and 6, that the traffic around Walmart, the traffic around that Chestnut Ridge 57 area, same thing with Broad Street and 57, is just a mess as everybody is trying to come home from work and that. When we add this many houses into there, has there been any discussion as far as how we can address that traffic? And I guess my inclination would be I'd want to see that as part of the overall plan, because otherwise I'm afraid that we're going to take what is in essence already a nightmare and make it worse. So has there been any kind of study? Has there been any kind of thought given to that as far as how we're going to address the traffic?
Well, the original study was done concerning Reeser Point Crossing. That's why it exists today. With the houses and so forth, they've got the outlet to East Broad Street and to go either way on East Broad Street. I would expect, and my engineers have commented to me, that less than 5% of the traffic is going to go to Chestnut Ridge. Most of it's going to come to East Broad Street and so forth, where the traffic is a lot less than it is at Chestnut Commons.
What I would also point out was that this development is originally happening because Mr. Reeser donated land to the city to build the connector road between the Walmart property and Broad Street as a help to alleviate some of the traffic issues. So I understand your concern. That was originally why he donated the property, to allow the street to be built and the TIF on his property to support the street being built to help alleviate some of that traffic.
Any other questions from the commission?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Graves.
I just would like to point out that it's my understanding the developers agreement that was entered into on December 2nd, 2019 between the City of Elyria and DVR, this primarily was in relation to the construction of the roads, and that as the development proceeds, this agreement would have to be revised and updated to include a lot of the things that we're talking about.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission? Are there any other proponents? Are there any other proponents? Are there any other proponents? Are there any opponents? Are there any opponents? Yes, please come forward. You'll please state your name and address for the record.
My name's Ann Masnick, and I live on Sugar Ridge Road in North Ridgeville. My question is, as I heard the engineer, and you keep saying there's stormwater drain off. Well, right now, the stormwater drain off goes into 4 retention ponds that then drain behind or through Handyside and through North Ridgeville into their ditch. Now you're building, and you're going to take land that not absorbs at all, but absorbs some of the water. Now it's going more into retention ditches. How is that going to be handled? Is that water are you going to put in your own sewer lines and your own, because right now there's nothing there. And on the other end where I am, when there's a substantial amount of rain, those ditches just flood. And why, and I hate to sound like this, but why should I suffer because, you know, you're going to take a shortcut and leave retention, or you're not going to do? I just need to know if you have something planned to direct that water to sewers, or because it's not now. I'm sorry.
Mr. Schneider, do you want to start with that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The development was actually designed for commercial originally, and the stormwater improvements were included. They included the retention ponds as well as storm sewers. The natural drainage is maintained to its proper outlets as well. Now, with a commercial versus a residential, it would be, and I don't have it in front of me yet, but I would assume that the amount of impervious area that was being created as part of the residential units will actually be less than what that of a commercial unit. So if it was designed for a commercial units and it had a certain level, which is going to be higher than what the residential probably will show is being built.
Thank you, Mr. Schneider. Mr. Lum?
Yes, I would say a couple things. One, the water that goes into the ponds drains 2 places, one to the ditch, but it also drains under the road to the other pond and into the stormwater system. But as we all know, there was problems with water after the road was built. That's all being addressed between the DBR's engineers and the city's engineers pursuant to the settlement agreement to resolve those issues and hopefully get the property to a point that all of the stormwater is dealt with so that it can be developed, because that's what's prevented the development to date. So over the past years, the engineers have been involved trying to work together to find a solution that will work that will solve the drainage issues. That's all going to be part of and taken care of as part of the TIF that is going to be amended per this. So yes, we understand the concerns. It's important for our development to make sure that the water is dealt with because we don't want to have those issues either.
Thank you. Are there any opponents? Are there any opponents? Are there any opponents? Any other questions or concerns from the commission? Mr. Panowski.
I'd like to ask Mr. Graves a question based on a statement he previously made. The development agreement or settlement agreement between DVR and the city, is that just addresses the street at this point, or what's included in that that we know has been resolved and agreed to?
So I have the document here, and it is quite lengthy. It's 17 pages with a bunch of attachments.
You haven't had a chance to review it. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I thought
But
you
it's- but no,
had said
I-
something,
Right.
summarized something before.
But this was enacted back in 2019, and my just cursory review of it, it's all about putting in the streets and I think the improvements that have already been made. Going forward with the subdivision, it would be my understanding there would have to be either a revised or a new developers agreement that would address the concerns related specifically to the proposal before you today.
Okay, thank you.
No questions, no other proponents, excuse me, no other questions, no other opponents or proponents. I'll entertain a motion to approve 2024-100075 DBR Commercial Realty LLC, East Broad Street, Elyria, Ohio 44035 for request for a new subdivision at Reeser Point Crossings. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Tedder. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Ardarico. Any questions? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay.
Nay.
One nay, motion carries. Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
The next item on the agenda is the second public hearing, 2024-100073, Har Plaza, 15 Chestnut Street, Elyria, Ohio, 44035. Request a variance from section 1137.15C2 of the Elyria Codified Ordinance for the installation of a rear yard 8-foot chain link fence. Is the proponent here? Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. Ron Coco with Clark and Post Architects, 6125 South Broadway in Lorraine, representing Lorraine Metropolitan Housing Authority. We're here this morning, and LMHA is doing some exterior site improvements at the Har Plaza site on Chestnut and Lake. And one of the items they would like to do is extend a privacy fence along the rear property line that abuts the Black River, just try to keep their residents somewhat protected along that sight line. So we've proposed an 8-foot black chain link fence. The zoning code has a limit of 6 foot, so we're asking for a 2-foot variance.
Thank you, Mr. Farkas.
Mr. Chair, through you, thank you. The proponent is requesting a variance from Elyria Codified Ordinance, Section 113715C2, to install several hundred feet of 8-foot-high chain link fence along the rear and a portion of the front yard of the site. The zoning of the site is currently residential multi-household high-density district, the requirements of which are located in Codified Ordinance, Chapter 1152. My findings: the proposed fence is indicated to be 8 feet in height and is indicated on the site plan provided when the code only permits 6. Recommendations: due to the proximity of the structure to the river and the zoning district in which it is located, I find the above information complies with the spirit and intent of the zoning code and am therefore in favor of the request.
Thank you, Mr. Farkas. Ms. Scott?
Thank you. So design review is not applicable with the variance request. However, a waiver of the design review guidelines will be required on this project, but that's listed as the next planning commission case number. So would you like for me to go over that waiver request now or hold off?
I'll come back to that.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Engineer, Mr. Schneider?
Engineering has no comments.
Mr. Fire Chief?
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Fire Department has no comment.
Okay. Any questions from the committee? Mr. Hubbard?
Just a quick question. I mean, I understand and appreciate where you're trying to, I think, in essence, keep people from the river or protect people. I'm assuming, will there be gates for access if for some reason someone winds up on the wrong side of the fence so that people can get through?
Yes, there will be.
All right, perfect.
Thank you. Mr. Anderko?
Yes, just a question on why going to the 8 from the 6? I mean, could you not accomplish the same goal and being compliant with just following the 6? Is there, what do you accomplish with the extra 2 feet?
They just feel it'd be a little more restrictive in terms of people having to climb over an 8-foot fence to get onto the property versus a 6-foot. Just a little additional protection that they're looking to provide.
Thank you. Are there any proponents? Mr. Oswald? State your name and address for the record, please.
Kenny Oswald, 237 Pepperdine Drive. I'm glad that they're doing this. I don't know if it's a possibility that they can put a wire on top of it. One of the reasons I think that they're doing this also, we have cleared out the homeless camps that are down in there and talk about protection for their people that live there. I am 100% for this. So I don't know if they could do that wire barrier, if that would be legal or not. And if there's a possibility where that fence could come towards the bridge, I don't know, to completely close them out, because they'll always find a way to scoot in or get those. I feel so sorry for the homeless, but it's not a good place for them to be. But I'm glad that they're doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. Mr. Farkas?
Mr. Chair, through you to Mr. Oswald. If I'm to infer the wire is barbed wire? The barbed wire style? Okay. The zoning code prohibits the use of barbed wire with exceptions of areas that need to be properly secured, police stations, certain types of dangerous chemicals. In this particular location, it would not classify as such use, and that would be a separate variance that would need to be pursued.
Thank you, Mr. Farkas. Are there any proponents? Are there any proponents? Are there any opponents? Are there any opponents? Are there any opponents? Any further questions from the commission? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve
So
public
moved.
hearing 2024100073.
So
Moved by Mr. Hubbard. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Pronowski. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
On to item number 8, Planning Commission cases 24-100074, Howard Plaza, 15 Chestnut Street, Elyria, Ohio. 44035 requests the waiver of the design review guides for the installation of a rear yard chain link fence. Ms. Scott.
Thank you. The downtown design review guidelines prohibit the use of chain link or wood fences. This property is located within that district. As previously stated, the proponent is planning to utilize a black vinyl coated chain link fence. It is my recommendation to approve this waiver.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Any comments from any other staff? Any questions from the commission? Seeing none, I entertain a motion to approve 24-10074 for Howard Plaza and request a waiver of design review guidelines for installation of a rear yard chain link fence. Do I have a motion?
Do you need opponents or?
No. It's
Okay.
not a public
So-
hearing. Yep.
yeah.
Moved by Mr. Battle. Do I have a
Second.
second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hubbard. Any further discussion? All in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Next item on the agenda is another planning commission case, 24-100076, Ridgewater LTD, 260 South Logan Street, Elyria, Ohio, 44035, plat approval for Phase 6 of the Ridgewater subdivision. Mr. Yost?
Bob Yost, 260 South Logan. It's a long time since I've been last. Anyways, we've poured and done all the improvements for Phase 6 at Ridgewater. Consists of 41, I think it's 40 or 41 lots. Everything's been inspected, graded. The only thing we're waiting on is naturally Ohio Edison and Columbia Gas. So we're looking for final plat approval so that we can record our plat.
Thank you, Mr. Yost. Mr. Farkas, any comments?
Mr. Chair, through you, the proponent is requesting approval of Phase 6 of the subdivision. This phase includes 10.5726 acres and is focalized on the northwest portion of the subdivision, consisting of 39 sublots. My recommendations: the 6th phase of the residential development appears to adhere to the original subdivision zoning review. I recommend approval of this phase of the subdivision contingent all requirements have been satisfied with the city engineering department and will therefore defer to them for further recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Farkas. Ms. Scott?
No comment.
Engineer Schneider?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The proposed subdivision, all the improvements have been completed except for the sidewalks, which is typical. That's done with the house. So at this time, I recommend that the final plat be approved.
Thank you, Mr. Schneider. Assistant Fire Chief Gall?
Thank you, Chair. No fire department comments, sir.
Any questions from the commission? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve 24-100076, Ridgewater LTD, 260 South Logan, Elyria, Ohio, 44035, for plat approval for Phase 6 in the Ridgewater subdivision. Do I have a motion? Moved by Mr. Pronowski, second by Mr. Anderko. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Yost.
Thank you.
Next item is summary reports of design review application have been approved by the design review staff. Ms. Scott?
Thank you. As listed on the agenda, there were 5 projects that Mr. Farkas and I reviewed since the last Planning Commission meeting. A couple of those were for signage. One was for exterior improvements for windows and painting. One was for landscaping improvements here on Broad Street. And the last one was to remove and replace windows at 131 Court Street.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Is there any questions from the commission? Okay, Mr. Craig, we do not have to vote on these, correct? Or do we have to vote?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, great. No questions from the commission. Any other staff or commission reports? All right, our next meeting will be July 2nd, 2024. I appreciate everybody's time. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Hubbard, second by Mr. Anderko. Any discussion? All in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Meeting adjourned. Thank you. Yeah, I'll grab that keys. Yep, yep.